Outlaw bikers mock the wrong police dog at a gas station. It was a quiet afternoon at a small roadside gas station on Route 66. The sun blazed overhead, and the faint hum of cicadas filled the air. Inside the station, a lone cashier browsed through a magazine while a police cruiser parked by the pumps, its engine idling. Out of nowhere, the roar of motorcycle engines shattered the tranquility. A group of outlaw bikers rolled in, their leather jackets adorned with patches of skulls and flames. They were the Iron Fangs, a notorious gang known for causing trouble wherever they went. The leader, a burly man with a thick beard and sunglasses, dismounted his Harley and sneered as he saw the police cruiser. His crew followed, parking their bikes in a semicircle around the cruiser, blocking it in. Standing next to the cruiser was Officer Sarah Daniels, a petite but tough cop, filling her tank. Inside the car sat Koda, her loyal Belgian Malinois police dog, who was trained for K-9 operations. One of the bikers, a lanky man with a snake tattoo wrapping around his neck, pointed at Koda and laughed. "What's that, a mutt on duty? Bet he couldn't chase a squirrel, let alone a bad guy." Another chimed in, "Maybe he's just here to fetch donuts for the officer." The group erupted in mocking laughter. Officer Daniels clenched her jaw, but kept her cool. "Leave the dog alone," she warned. "He's more capable than all of you combined." The leader smirked, stepping closer to the cruiser. "Oh yeah? Let's see what this mutt's got." He leaned down and tapped on the window, taunting the dog. Koda's ears perked up, and he stared at the man with sharp, unyielding focus. "Careful," Daniels said. "He doesn't take kindly to threats." Ignoring her, the leader opened a bag of beef jerky and waved a piece in front of the dog. "Here, boy. Want a snack? Or are you too scared to come out and get it?" Koda let out a low, menacing growl. The bikers laughed again, mistaking the sound for a bluff. "You think your mutt can handle us?" the leader taunted. Daniels smirked this time. "You asked for it." She opened the car door and gave a simple command. "Koda, detain." In a flash, Koda leaped from the car, a blur of muscle and precision. The bikers barely had time to react before the dog latched onto the leader's arm, his powerful jaws locking down with unrelenting force. The man screamed, stumbling backward. The other bikers tried to intervene, but Koda released the leader and turned to face them, his teeth bared and growls echoing like thunder. Daniels stood firm, her hand on her holstered weapon. "You're outnumbered, officer," one of the bikers said, trying to sound tough despite the fear in his voice. "Am I?" Daniels replied coolly. "Koda, guard." Koda advanced, his sharp bark making the gang freeze in their tracks. They exchanged nervous glances, their bravado crumbling. "You've got two choices," Daniels said. "Leave now or I let Koda finish what he started. And trust me, he doesn't miss." The leader, clutching his bruised arm, barked, "Let's get out of here." One by one, the bikers mounted their bikes and sped off, their tails between their legs. The gas station returned to its quiet state, save for the distant rumble of motorcycles fading into the horizon. Daniels knelt down and patted Koda's head. "Good boy." Koda wagged his tail, his fierce demeanor replaced with his usual playful spirit. The cashier peeked out from behind the counter, wide-eyed. "Remind me never to mess with a cop dog." Daniels chuckled. "Smart choice. Koda's the real deal." With the bikers gone and order restored, Daniels and Koda drove off, leaving behind a story that would make its rounds through Route 66 folklore for years to come. As Officer Daniels and Koda drove away, she glanced at her rearview mirror, her brow furrowing. Something about the encounter didn't sit right. The bikers had retreated too quickly. These weren't the kind of men to back down easily, especially from a single officer and her dog. Koda, sitting alert in the passenger seat, let out a low growl, his ears twitching. Daniels gave him a sidelong glance. "You feel it too, huh, boy?" Moments later, her radio crackled to life. "Officer Daniels, we've got reports of the Iron Fangs regrouping at an abandoned diner off Route 66. They're up to something, possible retaliation. Be advised." Daniels gripped the wheel tighter. Retaliation wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. These bikers had a reputation for revenge. Copy that, she responded. I'm heading there now. As she approached the diner, the once-abandoned lot was filled with motorcycles. A dozen bikers loitered outside, smoking and shouting. Daniels pulled over a safe distance away, observing them from behind her tinted windows. Koda, she whispered. Looks like it's round 2. She grabbed her radio again, calling for backup, but the nearest unit was at least 20 minutes away. She couldn't wait that long. The Iron Fangs were notorious for their quick getaways, and she had no intention of letting them slip through her fingers. Daniels opened the car door and stepped out. The bikers noticed her immediately, their laughter ceasing as they turned toward her. Well, look who it is, the leader sneered, rubbing his bandaged arm. Officer Daniels and her little mutt. You're brave coming here alone. Daniels smiled, her hand resting on Koda's harness. Who said I'm alone? With a swift command, Koda leaped from the car, standing by her side, his eyes locked on the gang. His low growl was a clear warning. Any wrong move would be their last. The leader took a step forward, his expression darkening. You think you and that dog are going to take us all down? This isn't a gas station, lady. You're out of your league. Daniels didn't flinch. She reached for her belt, pulling out a small device, a body cam, already recording. Careful, she said, her voice calm. This is live streaming to the precinct. Anything you do next will be evidence. The bikers hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. But the leader wasn't ready to back down. You think I care about your little camera? Boys, let's show her what happens when you mess with the Iron Fangs. The gang began advancing, their confidence returning. Daniel stepped back slightly, giving Koda the signal. Koda, engage. The dog launched forward like a bullet, taking down the nearest biker with precision. The man hit the ground, yelling as Koda pinned him. Daniels moved quickly, pulling out her taser and taking down another biker who lunged at her. The lot descended into chaos. Some bikers fled toward their motorcycles, but Koda's agility was unmatched. He darted between them, disarming and incapacitating with practiced ease. Daniels backed him up, her movements swift and efficient, her training shining through. As the dust settled, only a handful of bikers remained standing, their bravado shattered. The leader, now visibly shaken, raised his hands in surrender. All right, he shouted. Call off the dogs. Daniels gave Koda a hand signal, and he returned to her side, panting but alert. She pointed her taser at the leader. On the ground. Now. Within minutes, the remaining bikers were cuffed and lined up, awaiting the arrival of backup. As the sound of sirens grew louder in the distance, Daniels looked down at Koda, who wagged his tail proudly. Looks like we handled it, partner, she said, scratching behind his ears.
But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. The Iron Fangs were part of a much bigger network, and taking down this group would only put her on their radar. As the backup officers arrived to secure the scene, Daniels glanced toward the horizon. The fight wasn't finished, not yet. The precinct was quiet, the faint hum of fluorescent lights filling the air. Officer Daniels sat at her desk, replaying the footage from her bodycam. She studied every detail, the faces of the bikers, their tattoos, their movements, looking for anything that could lead to a bigger breakthrough. Koda lay at her feet, his ears twitching occasionally. The bond they shared was unspoken but strong. She could sense he was still on edge. The door creaked open, and Captain Hayes stepped inside, his face grim. Daniels, he said, closing the door behind him. We've got a problem. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Let me guess. The Iron Fangs. Hayes nodded, tossing a file onto her desk. They're part of a larger syndicate. We've been tracking their operations for months. Gun running, narcotics, even human trafficking. What you did today rattled the hornet's nest. Daniels flipped open the file. Grainy surveillance photos showed familiar faces. The leader of the group she had confronted at the diner, along with others she hadn't seen before. One face stood out, a sharp-eyed man with a snake tattoo coiled around his neck. Who's this? She asked, tapping the photo. Marcus Viper Kane, Hayes replied. Second in command of the Iron Fangs, but he's the real brains behind their operations. We've been trying to pin something on him for years, but he's slippery. Word is, he wasn't happy about what happened today. Daniels frowned. If he's as dangerous as you say, he won't let this slide. Hayes nodded. That's why I'm assigning you a partner. You'll need backup for what's coming. I already have a partner, Daniels said, gesturing to Koda. Hayes smirked. True, but you're going to need more than a dog for this one. Before she could argue, the door opened again, and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped in. His rugged features and sharp eyes immediately commanded attention. Daniels, meet Detective Ryan Cole, Hayes said. He's been working undercover, infiltrating gangs like the Iron Fangs. He knows their playbook. Cole extended a hand. Looks like you stirred up some trouble, he said with a faint smile. Daniels shook his hand reluctantly. Trouble seems to find me. That makes two of us, Cole replied. Hayes interrupted. The two of you will be heading out tonight. We've got intel that Viper is meeting his crew at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. It's our chance to intercept them before they regroup. Daniels nodded, her adrenaline kicking in. What's the plan? You and Cole will go in undercover, Hayes explained. Koda stays back unless things go south. We need to gather as much intel as we can before making a move. Daniels glanced at Koda, who was staring intently at Cole. He doesn't like staying behind, she said. Cole chuckled. Neither do I. Let's make this quick. An hour later, Daniels and Cole pulled up near the warehouse, dressed in civilian clothes. The area was eerily quiet, with only the faint hum of a generator breaking the silence. Daniels adjusted the hidden MIC in her jacket, while Cole checked his weapon. Inside the warehouse, voices echoed, laughter mixed with the clinking of bottles. The bikers were gathered around a table, their leader, Viper, at the center. Stay cool, Cole whispered as they approached. Daniels nodded, her heart pounding. As they stepped inside, Viper's piercing eyes locked onto them. New faces, he said, his voice low and menacing. Who the hell are you? Daniels forced a smirk. Heard you're looking for new recruits. Thought we'd see if you're worth our time. The bikers laughed, but Viper wasn't amused. He leaned forward, studying her face. You look familiar. Cole stepped in, his tone calm but firm. She's just another drifter, like me. Now, are we talking business or not? Viper's eyes flicked between them before he finally leaned back. Fine. Let's talk. As the conversation continued, Daniel scanned the room, mentally cataloguing exits and potential threats. Her hidden MIC transmitted everything back to the precinct, but she knew this could go sideways at any moment. Viper leaned closer, his tone shifting. You know, it's funny. Some cop with a mutt caused us a lot of trouble today. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Daniels froze for half a second, but it was enough. Viper's expression darkened, and he reached for the gun at his side. Guess you're not as smart as you think, he snarled. Before she could respond, the room erupted into chaos. Daniels ducked as a chair flew past her, and Cole pulled his weapon, firing a warning shot into the air. Outside, Koda, who had been waiting in the car, perked up at the commotion. His instincts took over, and before the handler in the squad car could stop him, Koda leapt out and sprinted toward the warehouse. Inside, Daniels and Cole were pinned behind a stack of crates. We're outnumbered, Cole muttered. Not for long, Daniels said, a faint smile playing on her lips. The warehouse door slammed open, and Koda charged in, his bark echoing like thunder. The bikers turned, startled, but it was too late. Koda was a blur of fur and precision, taking down one man after another. With Koda creating chaos, Daniels and Cole regained control. Within minutes, the bikers were subdued, and Viper was on his knees, growling in frustration. You'll regret this, he spat as Daniels cuffed him. She leaned in, her voice steady. Maybe. But you'll regret it more. As the backup arrived to secure the scene, Daniels looked at Koda, who wagged his tail proudly. Good boy, she said, scratching his ears. Cole smirked. Remind me never to mess with your dog. Daniels chuckled. Smart man. The precinct buzzed with activity as Officer Daniels finished her report. The Iron Fangs had taken a heavy hit, and their second-in-command, Viper, was now in custody. Still, there was no sense of victory in the air. Everyone knew the Iron Fangs were just the tip of the iceberg. Daniels glanced at Koda, lying beside her desk, his head resting on his paws but his ears alert. Detective Cole leaned against the doorframe, sipping a cup of coffee. "You think this is over?" Cole asked, breaking the silence. Daniels shook her head. "Not even close. Viper may be locked up, but the real leader, whoever's pulling the strings, is still out there." As if on cue, Captain Hayes stepped into the room, his face grim. He held a folder in one hand and a phone in the other. "Daniels." "Cole." "We've got a situation," Hayes said, placing the folder on the desk. "The Iron Fangs aren't done. We intercepted chatter suggesting they're planning something big, bigger than anything we've seen." Cole straightened. "What kind of big are we talking about?" Hayes flipped open the folder to reveal grainy satellite images of a remote compound deep in the mountains. "Intel suggests this is their main base of operations. Weapons stockpiles, drug labs, the works. And if the chatter's right, they're gearing up for a retaliation strike." Daniels frowned. "Retaliation against who?" Hayes' jaw tightened. "Us. They're targeting law enforcement, specifically anyone involved in today's takedown." Daniels exchanged a glance with Cole. "Looks like we've been upgraded to their hit list." Cole smirked. "Great. Just what I needed."
Daniels leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This was bigger than anything she'd ever faced. She looked down at Koda, who wagged his tail as if sensing the weight of the moment. "When do we move?" she asked. "Tonight," Hayes said. "You'll have to be quick and precise. The element of surprise is the only advantage we have." Hours later, Daniels and Cole found themselves deep in the forest, approaching the Iron Fangs compound under the cover of darkness. Koda moved silently beside them, his training making him a vital part of the team. Through binoculars, they spotted armed guards patrolling the perimeter. Vehicles loaded with crates of weapons and drugs moved in and out of the compound. Hayes ignored the sarcasm and continued. "The compound is heavily fortified, and we don't have enough intel to launch a full-scale raid." "That's where you two come in." Daniels raised an eyebrow. "You want us to infiltrate their main base?" "Not alone," Hayes replied. "We're coordinating with a specialized tactical team. But you two know these guys better than anyone now. Your intel will guide the operation." "Looks like a fortress," Cole muttered. Daniels nodded. "But every fortress has a weak point." Koda let out a low growl, his ears perked. He had caught a scent, something or someone nearby. Daniels crouched low, signaling for Cole to stay quiet. Moments later, a figure emerged from the trees, a scout from the Iron Fangs. He hadn't seen them yet, but he was heading straight toward their position. Daniels gave Koda a silent hand signal. The dog moved like a shadow, intercepting the scout and taking him down quietly. Cole smirked. "Remind me again who the real star of this team is." "Don't get jealous," Daniels whispered. With the scout neutralized, they moved closer to the compound. The plan was simple: gather as much intel as possible and relay it to the tactical team. But as they approached, something felt off. The compound was too quiet. "Where is everyone?" Cole muttered. Daniels scanned the area. "This doesn't feel right." Suddenly, the faint sound of motorcycles echoed in the distance. Cole's eyes widened. "They're not here, because they're already on the move." Daniel's stomach sank. "They're heading for the precinct." She grabbed her radio. "Captain Hayes, come in. The Iron Fangs are moving out. Target unknown. But they're heading your way." Static crackled on the other end before Hayes' voice came through. "We're already picking up reports of bikers converging on the precinct. Get back here now." Daniels didn't hesitate. "Let's move," she shouted to Cole, calling Koda to her side. As they raced back through the forest, the distant sound of engines grew louder. The Iron Fangs weren't just regrouping, they were launching an all-out assault. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The roar of motorcycles echoed through the dark streets as Daniels, Cole, and Koda raced back toward the precinct. The squad car's tires screeched as Daniels pushed the engine to its limit, weaving through empty intersections. Cole adjusted the strap on his rifle, his expression grim. They're not coming for a warning shot. They're coming to wipe us out. Daniels gritted her teeth. Not if we stop them first. Koda sat in the back seat, his eyes locked on the road ahead. He could feel the tension in the air, his instincts kicking in as if he knew a storm was about to hit. As they approached the precinct, the scene ahead was chaos. Bikers swarmed the parking lot, armed with crowbars, chains, and even Molotov cocktails. Flames licked the edges of patrol cars, and officers scrambled to form a defensive line. Daniels slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded to a stop. "We're going in hot," she shouted, grabbing her weapon. Cole nodded, his jaw set. "Let's show them what they're up against." Before Daniels could open the door, Koda let out a sharp bark, his body coiled with anticipation. "Stay close, boy," Daniels said as she released him from the back seat. The two officers stepped out, weapons drawn, and Koda followed, his growl cutting through the noise. "Daniels." "Cole." Captain Hayes waved them over from behind a squad car, his face streaked with sweat and soot. "They're hitting us hard. We've got injured officers inside, and no backup for at least 15 minutes. "We don't have 15 minutes, Daniels said, scanning the scene. One of the bikers spotted them and shouted, "There they are!" The cop and her dog. The group turned their attention to Daniels, their leader stepping forward. It wasn't Viper this time, it was someone worse. A hulking figure with scars across his face and a grim smile. Cole narrowed his eyes. "That's Crusher, the Iron Fangs enforcer. If he's here, this is personal." Crusher pointed at Daniels. "You humiliated us, lady. Now we're gonna tear this place apart, starting with you." Daniels raised her weapon. "You want me? Come and get me." The bikers surged forward, shouting war cries, but Koda was faster. The dog launched himself at the first attacker, knocking him to the ground. Daniels and Cole opened fire, their shots precise, aiming to disable without killing. Crusher barreled toward them like a freight train, swinging a massive chain. Daniels dodged just in time, rolling to the side as the chain smashed into a squad car, denting the metal. "Koda, take him," Daniels commanded. The dog darted toward Crusher, teeth bared, but the enforcer swung the chain, narrowly missing Koda. The dog was quick, circling him, waiting for an opening. Meanwhile, Cole covered Daniels, taking down bikers trying to flank them. "We're getting overrun," he shouted. Inside the precinct, officers barricaded doors and tended to the wounded. The sound of breaking glass and gunfire filled the air. Daniels focused on Crusher, who seemed unfazed by the chaos. He laughed, swinging his chain again. "That dog won't save you." But Crusher underestimated Koda's speed. The dog lunged, sinking his teeth into the man's arm. Crusher roared in pain, dropping the chain. Daniels seized the moment, rushing forward and delivering a precise strike to his knee, sending him crashing to the ground. With Crusher immobilized, the remaining bikers hesitated. The sight of their enforcer subdued by a single cop and her dog broke their morale. "Fall back," one of them shouted, retreating toward their bikes. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air as backup finally arrived. SWAT vans and patrol cars surrounded the area, cutting off any chance of escape. The bikers were rounded up, one by one, while paramedics tended to the wounded. Daniels knelt beside Koda, checking him for injuries. "You okay, buddy?" she asked, stroking his fur. Koda wagged his tail, his eyes bright despite the intensity of the battle. Cole approached, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've worked with a lot of partners, but I've never seen anything like you two." Daniels smirked. "We make a good team." As Crusher was hauled away in cuffs, he glared at Daniels. "This isn't over," he growled. "You'll regret this." Daniels met his gaze, unflinching. "Bring it on." Daniels studied the photos, her jaw tightening. "You're saying the leader's here in the city?" Hayes nodded. "If the intel is correct, yes. But he's elusive, nobody's ever seen his face. He keeps his identity hidden, even from his closest allies. You two are going in undercover." Cole smirked. "Guess that means I need to dust off my dancing shoes." Daniels ignored his comment, focusing on the plan. "What's our objective?" "Gather intel, identify the Viper if possible, and get out without blowing your cover," Hayes said. "This is strictly reconnaissance." No heroics. Daniels looked down at Koda. And him. Hayes shook his head. Not this time. A police dog will blow your cover instantly. He stays here. Koda let out a soft whine, as if understanding the conversation. Daniels crouched beside him, scratching behind his ears. You'll sit this one out, buddy, but I'll need you ready when things get messy. But as the dust settled and the bikers were loaded into vans, a nagging thought lingered in her mind. The Iron Fangs weren't just a gang. They were part of something bigger. And if tonight was any indication, the real fight was still to come. The precinct was quiet again, but it was the uneasy calm that came after a storm. Officer Daniels sat at her desk, her uniform dusty and stained from the chaos earlier. Koda lay at her feet, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes remained vigilant, scanning the room every so often. Detective Cole leaned against the doorframe, a fresh coffee in his hand. You know this isn't the end, right? Daniels glanced at him, her expression tired but resolute. I know. Crusher was just another pawn. The real mastermind is still out there, and whoever they are, they're not going to stop. Cole nodded, sipping his coffee. Word is, the Iron Fangs are part of a much larger operation, something international. If that's true, we're looking at more than just bikers and street fights. Before Daniels could respond, Captain Hayes entered, a file in hand and a grim look on his face. Daniels.
Cole.
We've got a new lead, he said, tossing the file onto the desk. Daniels opened it, revealing surveillance photos of a high-end nightclub in the city. Men in suits mingled with rough-looking bikers, and stacks of cash were being exchanged. This is the Black Thorn, Hayes explained. A front for the Iron Fangs money laundering operation. It's also where their real leader, a man known only as the Viper, is said to operate. We've got intel that he's planning his next move. The following evening, Daniels and Cole arrived at the Black Thorn, dressed to blend in with the crowd. The club was alive with pounding music and flashing lights, the air thick with smoke and tension. They moved through the crowd, their hidden earpieces keeping them in contact with Hayes back at the precinct. I've got eyes on a group of bikers near the VIP section, Cole said, nodding discreetly toward a roped-off area guarded by two massive men. Daniels followed his gaze. The bikers from the warehouse were there, along with other unfamiliar faces. One man in a sharp suit seemed to be giving orders, his demeanor calm yet commanding. That's got to be him, Daniels whispered. The Viper. Cole frowned. Or someone pretending to be him. Let's get closer. As they approached, the man in the suit glanced their way. For a brief moment, his piercing eyes locked onto Daniels, and a faint smile crossed his lips. Welcome, he said, his voice smooth but menacing. I don't believe we've met. New to the families? Daniels forced a smile, her heart pounding. Just passing through. Heard this was the place to be. The man chuckled, his gaze lingering on her. It is. But only if you can prove you belong. Daniels felt the weight of the moment. This was no ordinary man. This was someone dangerous, someone who thrived on power and control. Cole stepped in, his tone casual. We're here to talk business. Heard you've got some interesting opportunities. The man studied them for a moment before nodding toward the back of the club. Let's talk. Privately. As they followed him, Daniels discreetly tapped her earpiece. Hayes, we're going dark. Keep an eye on us. The back room was dimly lit, with a single table and chairs. The man gestured for them to sit, then leaned forward, his smile fading. I know who you are, he said, his voice low. Officer Daniels. Detective Cole. Daniels' blood ran cold. You've been meddling in my operations, he continued, his tone icy. And now you've walked right into my den. Before either of them could react, the door slammed shut, and armed men stepped out from the shadows. Looks like the game's over, the man said, leaning back in his chair. But don't worry. It's just beginning for me. The tension in the room was suffocating. Daniels and Cole exchanged a glance, both silently calculating their odds. The armed men flanking them had their weapons ready, but there was no panic in Daniels' eyes. Looks like you've got us, Daniels said calmly, leaning back in her chair. But if you think this is over, You're mistaken. The man in the suit, who could only be the Viper, smirked. You're bold, I'll give you that. But bravery doesn't change facts. You walked into my world uninvited. Now you pay the price. Cole raised an eyebrow. Funny thing about facts, they have a way of turning on you. Before the Viper could respond, a faint growling noise echoed through the room. It was so subtle at first, it seemed like it might have been their imagination. But it grew louder, more menacing. Daniels smiled faintly. You know, it's not a great idea to leave a police dog behind. The growl turned into a bark, and then chaos erupted. The door to the room slammed open, and Koda charged in, teeth bared and eyes blazing. He had tracked Daniels all the way to the club, his loyalty and instincts driving him forward. The armed men hesitated, startled by the sudden intrusion. That hesitation was all Daniels and Cole needed. Daniels flipped the table toward the Viper, knocking him back, while Cole dove for cover, drawing his concealed weapon. Shots rang out, but Koda was a blur of motion, taking down one guard after another with precision. The room became a battlefield. Cole provided cover fire as Daniels moved swiftly, disarming one of the guards and using his weapon against the others. The Viper, stunned but not out, lunged for a hidden firearm, but Koda intercepted him, clamping his jaws around the man's arm and forcing him to the ground. Good boy, Daniels shouted as she cuffed the Viper. The remaining guards, overwhelmed and outmatched, dropped their weapons and raised their hands. The sound of approaching sirens signaled that backup had arrived. As SWAT officers stormed the club, Daniels and Cole stepped out of the room, escorting a bloodied and defeated Viper. Koda trotted beside them, his tail wagging slightly, though his sharp eyes remained vigilant. Captain Hayes met them at the entrance. Nice work, he said, nodding at the Viper. We've been after this guy for years. Daniels handed over the cuffs. He wasn't as smart as he thought. Hayes glanced at Koda and smirked. Looks like your partner saved the day again. Daniels knelt beside Koda, scratching his ears. Couldn't have done it without you, buddy. As the Viper was loaded into a police van, he glared at Daniels one last time. You've won this round, but you'll never take down the entire network. Daniels met his gaze, unflinching. Watch me.